Hello everyone, this is a small walkthrough of the coding section of your first homework assignment. In your first question, you're asked to go ahead and create a num vowels and file function that takes in a file name and then finds the amount of vowels that are in there. We are also going to need to account for a file not found and an IO error. So to go ahead and get started, what we can do here to account for errors is create a try and accept clause. The try is going to pretty much try any piece of code, and an accept clause like this, without determining what type of error we have just yet, will pretty much, anytime you have an error, it will run whatever code's inside the accept. So now what I want to do is try to open up my file. So I can create a new variable called file. You might see some called f as well. And I can say file is equal to open, and I'm going to open my file name in the moding of read. So what this means when I say R is that I'm going to read in this file. Now what I could say next is create a content variable and set it to file.read. And what I want to do is show everyone a small little difference between these two. So if I print out the type of content after doing that, and I'll reassign the type of contents to file.read lines. You'll notice here, You'll notice here that when I try running my code, like so, num vowels in file of sample.txt. You'll notice that the first one of reading it, like file.read, gives me back a string, and the second one with read lines gives me back a list. So again, make sure you differentiate between those two if you're having trouble, and make sure to note the difference. There's a few different ways you can go about doing this problem. Each of them are applicable. Now what I want to do is try to build this up to a point where we can get a for loop running. So I'm going to go ahead and automate this function to run called num vowels and file like so. And what I'll do next is I'm going to say content is equal to file.read. And then I'm going to say for word in content, I'm going to print out my word. And let's see what this does for us. You'll notice that I'm actually automatically getting every single individual letter in each of the words. So instead of actually saying word, I'm going to change this to letter. And the reason that I'm getting every letter is because file.read returns a string. And in Python, when you get a string, like let's just say I have a string of A called John, I could say for letter in A, print letter. And you'll notice that each letter gets printed. So essentially, you can consider a string to be like a list of characters, and we can iterate through that list. So for the time being, this is useful for us. And what I want to do is very quickly try to see if I can figure out what I can do with these words here. So if I want to look for every single vowel, which is going to be A, E, I, O, and U, I could go ahead and try to do it with age really quick. I'm going to say if letter is equal to A, and I don't want to equal to the variable A, I want to equal to the character A, I'm going to print found an A. So it sees that I got like 2 A's right here, which is good. And now I could probably mimic this logic for the rest of these letters as well. But you'll notice here that I don't want to just print out something. I need to print out this type of output here. So it looks like I need to have a variable for each of my vowels. So what I can do is after I go ahead and I read in my content, I could say something like A is equal to 0, E is equal to 0, I is equal to 0, and so forth. And essentially, these are going to be variables that are going to keep track of all my values. And what happens now is that when I find an A, I'm going to set A to be incremented by 1. So A is equal to A plus 1. You can also say A plus equals 1. Either one of these are similar. I'm going to use A plus equals 1 for the time being. And then I could go ahead and simply just do the same thing for each of these. It's equal to I. Let me try to finish up these ones. O plus equals 1. And now if letter is equal to U, U plus equals 1. And now what I could say down here, after my try exception, is something along the lines of print. And then I could say A found. And I'll use some dot formatting for us here so it looks a bit neater. C dot format the variable of A. Let me see if this works. That looks pretty good, like the A found. And what I'll go ahead and do now is I'm just going to quickly copy and paste the remainder of these. to be E, I, O, and U. And now it looks like we're getting a pretty nice little feedback here for ourselves. So now why don't I go ahead and try to find it in the sample 2 that I'm using as well, that was provided to you. Let me try to run this guy. Cool. And it looks like I got 25721 and then 39, 34, 35. Oops, all my guys say A. Should probably change that there. U. Cool. Great. So again, I get the general sense. The sampled text file might be a little bit different here, but as long as you're getting the same little output as long as those numbers, that's what really counted here. So again, I'm getting the string representation of this, and because a string is an array of letters, I could go ahead and just increment it like so. Now, there's one more thing I want to take a look at, and then you'll see here that I need to catch some errors, such as file not found and IO error. And the way that you do this is essentially in Python, whenever you encounter an error in a try and except, such as an error would be trying to open a file name that doesn't exist, as demonstrated like so, if I do num vowels in file, and I just do txt, I'm going to get this error variable right away. So what I want to do is essentially, I need to try and figure out how do I find this error. And in this scenario, they're given to you, but usually you can find it in the big red writing. I'm going to say except file not found error. And I'm going to say print, you have the incorrect file. And now if I go ahead and I run this again, you'll notice, excuse me, you'll notice now that I get this new message called you have the incorrect file rather than the error that I usually got. The same can be done for the other guy here. If I go ahead and say IO error, which is an error when you're reading in files or anything as well, I'm going to say print, you have an IO error. Great. So now that is essentially one way you can go ahead and finish up this first problem here. And now the second guy is this merge files function. So what merge files should do is it should go ahead and take in three inputs, 1.txt, 2.txt, and out.txt. And then it should go ahead, while finding all of these errors, it should write out the contents of the two files into a new file for us. So essentially the logic here that we could use is go ahead and read in the first file, read in the second file, and then try to put it to this out area. Now to go ahead and get started, what we're going to want to do again is do this try and accept. And what I'll actually do is I'm just going to mimic down these accepts down here for the time being. So if I have my exception, one of the two files cannot be found, or you have incorrect file, I'm going to go ahead and if we don't have the file not found, I'm going to say one of the two files cannot be found, so forth. You can also do some extra steps where if either file can't be found, you can do like both files and so forth. What I want to do now is I can say file1, or I could say f1 is equal to open. File1 is my file, and I'm going to read it in. And then f2 is going to be open to file2, and I'm going to read it in. Now I'm going to say content of 1 is equal to f1.read. And I want this to be a string still because I'm just going to write it out to the other one. And then content 2 is going to be equal to f2.read. Now to go ahead and check if I'm doing this all right, I'm going to go ahead and print out both of these guys. And I'm going to change whatever this is saying to merge files. And I'm going to say 1.txt, 2.txt, out.txt. So that's the file I'm going to write it out to. And now we'll see that I get the two different contents of this file. So essentially, now that I have these contents, all I really need to do next is write all of this out into the other one. And what I could say here is content is equal to, or I could say content tree and so forth. 1 plus content 2. So I'm going to combine the two contents of these two files that I just read in. And then what I could say after that is, okay, I need to try to write out this file. And how do I write out a file? Well, first of all, you need to go ahead and open the file with writing. And so I'm going to open up this new file that I just got in. And the mode I'm going to work with is the W mode to write to it. And I'm going to say file tree.write, and I'm going to write content tree to that file. Now, if I go ahead and I try to merge these files, let's just see if this works on our back end here. You'll notice the timestamped updated, but let's see if I go ahead and I run this. Okay, we'll see I get an out right here, and I have my contents there as well. And what happens if one of these files are missing? Maybe I do something like this, where I delete it. Now you'll see I'll get that IO error. So again, the main thing about this assignment is you can just use the read method to go ahead and look at the strings. But another important thing is the difference between the read and read lines, as that's useful in different scenarios. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.